When was the last good episode of Star Trek? Well, if you ask me that question, I think you'd have to go to Star Trek Voyager Season 6, Episode 1, where there was the conclusion of the Equinox storyline. Right? Deep Space Nine had ended the previous June, and this was a pretty good episode, right? By Voyager standards, at the very least, right? You had the story of these aliens who were being shoved into a fuel canister by a rogue Starfleet ship that was also stranded in the Delta Quadrant, right? So you had some, interesting conflicts between Janeway and the other captain, and, as far as Voyager episodes go, it was pretty good, right? It was okay. So, by my calculations, it has now been 22 years, 7 months, 15 days, 18 hours, 8 minutes, and 1 second, as of this recording, since the last good episode of Star Trek. After that, you get a cavalcade of crap. Voyager ended badly. Then we had the disasters that was Star Trek Nemesis, not to mention the terrible prequels that have come out over the years that attempt to recapture the spirit of the original unsuccessfully. Plus, of course, whatever Picard was supposed to be. But hey, the franchise must still be popular because they still make more of the damn things. The latest being this new Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And this one is supposed to be the one that fixes things, that gets us back on track and makes it so that we boldly go where no one has gone before once again, and finally wipe away the sins that have been committed against Star Trek for the last 2 decades. Now, the 3 most common Star Trek critiques that I often hear from Star Trek fans is that the new stuff generally focus too much on pew-pew action shooting, that there's not enough thoughtful dialogue that was, of course, the hallmark of the good Star Trek series, and, of course, not enough exploration. But Strange New Worlds is here to change all that. Start things out with a peaceful mission, there's a minimal amount of pew-pew, there's Prime Directive debates, everyone loves those, and the episode results in a diplomatic solution arrived at through talking. Noble intentions. And you know what? The first episode wasn't actually that bad. It was okay. But the problem with Star Trek is a lot deeper than anyone thinks. Star Trek is a hopeful vision of humanity's collective future. It is a vision of human society that is post-capitalistic and post-scarcity. 2 Picard quotes put it best. One comes from Season 2, when he says, "People are no longer obsessed with the accumulation of things. We have eliminated hunger, want, the need for possessions." He also says in First Contact, "The acquisition of wealth is no longer the driving force in our lives. We work to better ourselves, and the rest of humanity." This is a vision of reality where no one goes hungry, because there are replicators, where everyone gets to fulfill their potential, and plus there are holodecks. In the 20th century, this was something people could believe. We landed on the moon, personal computers became a thing, the Cold War ended, things were looking up. Back in those days, you could imagine a descendant of yours attending Starfleet Academy, getting the big enlistment aboard the Starship Enterprise, or living on a glorious space station, exploring the galaxy, seeing strange new worlds and all of that glorious stuff. And, even if you weren't the creme de la creme, well, there's always the holodeck. But can you believe in that future now? Now, of all times? Climate change is ruining the planet. We're hearing news and headlines every day about rivers drying up, glaciers retreating, animals going extinct. Not to mention pointless wars that are being fought all around the world for pointless reasons. Worse still, if you're going to hear anything about space nowadays, it's probably going to be something about a billionaire going on a joyride. And that's the thing. There is no Star Trek future. It's gone. We all know it. We just don't want to admit it. And I think that's why most of these new Star Trek series are all set in the past, before Kirk. They're all prequels. It's a sort of longing, I think. A longing for that old Star Trek feeling that we used to have of a hopeful future. It's a sad irony. A show about the future is now entirely backward looking. It's trying to find that magic that used to be there, that hopefulness that's just dried up over the last 20 years. Can't get it back anymore, but we're still searching for it. Strange New Worlds recognizes this problem and tries to get around it. There's a pretty ham-fisted scene in the first episode where they essentially try to bridge the Federation utopian future with the crap that's going on today. And you see these shots that appear in the first episode. First, you've got this image of the January 6th protest. You see there's some anti-vax signs in there. Audit the vote, right? So you've got that. There's also this other scene that takes place with protest occurring with someone holding up a pro-union card. Is that one of the things that makes Earth bad in the 21st century? Unions? Is that what you're going for, Paramount? Well, guess so. Then you've got, of course, nuclear war that apparently unfolds shortly thereafter. I believe the order that Captain Pike gave in this episode was first there's an American Civil War, followed closely by the World War, and then I think the eugenics wars are supposed to take place somewhere in there as well. In all of this is a recognition, I think. A recognition that we're not going to make it to utopia without a world war or two. The intellectual property might indeed still generate profit, but in my opinion, Star Trek's been dead for a while, and it's not coming back anytime soon. The problem isn't even in the way it's written, the way it's presented, what the executives are saying, what the actors are doing. It's none of that. It's just that the underlying philosophy beneath this series just is out of date. It doesn't work. Not in the 21st century. It's sad, in my opinion. We used to have this idea of these people in the future, racially diverse, hyper-competent, hyper-educated, doing things not for material gain, but just because they wanted to better themselves. They wanted to be better people. They wanted to explore, discover, and expand their knowledge. And that was such a beautiful ideal. But nowadays, in our culture today, might as well be hobbits. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. And if you want to argue with me about some Star Trek semantics, feel free to leave a comment below.